A James Ham freeze did occur on Friday at 4:05. It was a 4:05 James Ham freeze. Of course, James looks like he's broadcasting in high definition right now. James, have you started to think about covering your first championship for the Sacramento Kings yet? Did that cross your mind? I mean, in the third quarter, fourth quarter, like when was the first time like I'm covering an NBA championship team? When was the first time that crossed your mind yesterday?
Yeah, I think it was when some guy on Twitter tweeted, "Oh, did you see how badly Keegan Murray missed that 3-pointer?"
He did miss it pretty bad. Too.
And then he hit the next 5 straight.
Right.
And you're like, we got a championship team. Like banner time.
Banner time, baby.
Banner time. Yeah, they look good. They look good. And the thing is, they look like they have an identity. Mm-hmm. I think that's the interesting thing. We saw the Lakers, who were all over the place. We saw the Portland Trailblazers, who think that they're on the right path, but don't have an identity. And then all of a sudden, the Sacramento Kings are the team that looks like they actually know what they're doing and have a game plan. And it's new. It's something different, something I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I loved what I saw from them on both sides of the floor, on the defensive end and the offensive end. And offensively, I was getting vibes, and I think it was the assist number that got me. What they have last night? How many assists they have? Like
34?
34, I think.
It got me thinking about what Coach Brown might have learned while being with the Warriors and incorporating that into what they do. And I know Jordy Fernandez works with the offense as well. And he has some things, they talk about Sabonis being in a Jokic role or anything like that. But just the constant movement, moving the ball, the idea that the ball moves faster than a man, and getting open shots that way. And I really, we saw it a little bit in the first game, and they just didn't hit shots. Obviously, yesterday was like that on steroids. Like they made everything yesterday. So that was probably best case scenario. But I just love the way they approach the game on the offensive end.
Yeah, it's a free-flowing motion offense, and everybody gets to touch the ball. Everybody is, like part of the flow, and it's something that Kevin Huerter talked about in the locker room afterwards. Just, I mean, his statement was the ball has energy, the ball brings life. I mean, just like I love it. Like again, we don't always see the ball moving around like it has been right now. They're going to have to, put in some sets where they're running pick and rolls. But if they can get away from that for large sections of the game, they might be okay. And that's just not the case in the last couple of years. So right now, the chemistry's good. We got to see how the bad times hit this team and see if they can survive those bad times. But it definitely, it feels good this early in the season for sure.
Official introduction, by the way, James Hammer, 1320 Kings Insider and creator of the Kings Beat podcast, available wherever you get podcasts from. It seemed like the word of the night last night was accountability. Terrence Davis talked about it in his post-game presser about making a couple of defensive mistakes and getting pulled out. And it seemed that word kept coming up quite a bit. What was your takeaway last night from particularly the players talking about Mike Brown holding them accountable?
Yeah, I thought Terrence Davis, like, that was really honest. He said, I came in and gave up 6 points, like, right away, and then boom, I get the hook. And rightfully so. He went through each of the 3 plays. He knew exactly what he did wrong. And that's the next step. It's when you don't just make mistakes, but you understand what you did wrong and you're able to fix the mistakes. And Mike Brown has talked about this, like, there needs to come a point where his players can explain to him exactly what they did wrong and talk in his terminology and, take accountability, but while using the understanding of why they're being held accountable. And that isn't, again, it's not always the case here in Sacramento. I'm going to point to something that's kind of been hanging out there with this group for a while, but it's a really high basketball IQ team. That's what it feels like when you're watching them play. And they might have some guys who don't have the highest of high basketball IQs, But for the most part, the guys who are playing, they do have a higher percentage than normal, you know, compared to what the Kings usually have. And that's huge. So when you are implementing these ideas and these game plans and these structures, when guys can take in the information and absorb it and you can go on to the next thing quickly, that means you just get to put more in and you can take more on early in the year. And I remember, even dating back to my first year, Paul Westball got to the first week of the season and he's like, I've got to pull back. I have to, they don't get it. I need to pull back a bunch of my game plan stuff and get this right until we get the basics down because they don't get it. We heard Dave Yeager talk about how this team just really didn't know how to play basketball yet. And, it takes a lot of teaching, a lot of understanding, but that's what I think the message is very clear. Mike Brown's staff, the way he built it, it's a bunch of guys that are familiar with him and that have the right motivation to support him. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing everything kind of come together early, but again, it is early and we need to make sure that they can ride out
early. It's 2 games, James. It's a huge sample size. Come on,
2
man.
preseason games. It's not even 2 games.
There's still games.
Hey, James, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today on the show, and I wanted to hear your thoughts about it, is KZ Okpala, and specifically him in the starting lineup. And at first, I really didn't see what they were trying to do. I was like, well, why KZ Okpala? I'm not really feeling it. Keegan should be starting, all this other stuff. Keegan probably will end up starting at some point. We all understand that. But, man, I look at KZ out there guarding Dame Lillard, Jeremy Grant, and Josh Hart during his times out there. And more importantly, that allowed De'Aaron Fox to be on Anthony Simons as opposed to being your primary perimeter defender. Talk about him last week or in the first game. Yeah, last week guarding LeBron James. I don't know, James. I really like him in that starting unit. And I know the shooting is the question, but what do you do if you're Mike Brown? What do you do? Because I kind of like KZ Okpala. It's really grown on me. I've seen the benefits of it with him being in that starting lineup, but I don't know how long he's going to be there.
Yeah, I'm going to say the best moment for me that KZ had was when he didn't start in the second half and he came off the bench with the second unit and looked good there. Because to me, that shows you that he can fit in the rotation whether he's starting or not. And that, to me, it was a very big moment for him. I thought he looked really, really good in the second unit as well. And, they tried Trey Lyles, coming into the third quarter. They opened the third with Trey Lyles, and they moved KZ Okpala to the bench. Mm-hmm. And Mike Brown continues to say, hey, look, we're going to mix things up. That position is still in flux. We've got a bunch of different guys that we can put in there and give them looks and see how it works out. And I talked to you guys about this last week, that a lot of times that if you're not a starter, if you're a KZ Okpala, and the guy behind you is Keegan Murray, and he's just killing it as a primary focal point with the second unit, there's a chance that you go sit deep on the bench and someone else from the bench comes up and becomes a starter. And just so they keep the rotations and what's working, going well, they try to keep those things together. And I thought KZ, his moment was that he stepped on the court and he hustled for rebounds. He fought. He stayed in front of his man. I think that his defense is contagious. We're seeing, the deflection thing is something that the Kings always search for, is guys who get a bunch of deflections. But, I don't remember a time where Harrison Barnes was jumping passing routes, was jumping in the passing lane and taking off. I mean, their first basket came on a Harrison Barnes steal and breakaway. Mm-hmm. That hasn't happened. That's not who he is as a defender. But when you got a guy like KZ that can cover your back, you're going to see a little bit more of that, a little bit more of that opportunity for some of the other guys.
James, do you think there's a hesitancy to start Keegan Murray?
I don't know what the hesitancy would be. I think the only thing is you're thinking it's possible that he's just not going to get the sheer volume of shots. And
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have to see what it looks like once this thing starts moving. And, because they do have a lot of guys who are going to, a lot of hungry mouths to feed. And, they talk a lot about sacrifice right now. And that's going to be for everybody. But, even like De'Aaron talking about it last night in the locker room, he's like, I look up and he's got 16 points and 4 rebounds and a steal. And it's like, how in the world did that just happen? Like, it's just so easy and effortless and it just happens. And so he's going to be tough to not move into the starting lineup at some point. But at the same time, if they're winning, like, who cares? Like, if they're winning, he's going to be playing close to 30 minutes tonight, and he's going to be in the Rookie of the Year conversation, and he'll be a starter here in Sacramento for a decade. So, like, you shouldn't worry about the first 20 games of his career or anything like that.
What do you, in your opinion, what gets taken off the table, so to speak, if they make a switch for Keegan to come in and start and KZ go to the bench?
It's interesting. I'll even say this. If you look at the way that the rotation was last night versus the way it was in the first game, they started doing like line changes and like swapping out entire groups. We started to see a different look last night where, 2 guys came off the floor early, and so all of a sudden you have, 40% of your starting lineup is different. You're never going to see like the full 5 guys that are bench unit guys on the court together for like an 8-minute period. That's not typical for what the Kings typically do or what most NBA teams do. So like, I think that's kind of the flow of it. You're going to have to watch and see how the flow and how when he does step in, where does he fit as far as like options. And, I guess if it's a free-flowing offense and you're averaging 34 assists a night, no one really cares. I mean, like whether he's coming off the bench or starting. But, it's going to be interesting. I don't think they have to do anything. I don't think Mike Brown has to. I think he can continue to tinker at that 4 position for a while.
Those 34 assists that you just mentioned yesterday, obviously the game looks a lot different when shots fall at the clip that they did last night, especially from 3, hitting 21 of them. But if possible, taking that out of context, did you like the way that the offense looked? Did you feel like it moved better than it did against the Lakers a week earlier?
That's tough because, again, when shots fall like that, that's it. Like if you're gonna make 21 threes, you're gonna win 50-something games.
Yeah.
If that's what you're gonna make, if that's what you're gonna hit every night. This team was designed to hit threes. I even was watching early on, and I think they were 5 of 12 to start. They got up to their percentage was extremely high, and I kept thinking that they had missed like a bunch of open shots. And that's where, again, I talk about like the identity of other teams that you're playing. I didn't think Portland had an identity at all on the offensive end or the defensive end. And I thought it just made a mess for them. And so for the Kings, it was like they kept doing the coming off the high screen and shooting over the top from the top of the arc. And, everyone was hitting. Everyone was taking turns. I think the only one who came in and just kept trying to hit one and couldn't was Chemezi. Where you're like, okay, like maybe that's not what you should be doing, even if it is, a blowout and all that stuff. Maybe you should be like trying to get into the flow and stop trying to put up a bunch of points. But overall, I really like the flow and everything else. Like everyone took good shots outside of, a handful of shots here and there. But, again, we can chalk a lot of that up to preseason and guys still learning and all that. It's just, what does it look like once you're playing against the top 8 or 9 guys from a different team?
I thought everybody looked really good last night. Even Alex Len came in there and played good minutes. And we always talk about Alex Len and where the minutes are going to come from. For me, and I think Damian feels the same way, it's not because he can't play. There's just so many guys that maybe are a little better in front of him. But I haven't seen, it's not like he's like a superstar, but he's
not going to hurt you.
No, that's what I was going to say. I can't remember a time I went in there and was like, oh, Alex Len killed them in a bad way out there. He's a solid guy. He knows what he's doing out there, and he does some good things. Do you think there is room for him in the rotation or is it just a numbers game and he can't get in there unless somebody like Rashawn was sick or something like that? He can't get in.
Yeah, I think every once in a while you'll get in someone in foul trouble, or you'll go up against just such a big guy that you need a shot blocker, and the other guy's, he's just a true 7 footer that can get up and really act as a rim protector. Outside of that, I think he's going to have a tough time, and it's because even we've seen it the last couple of days in practice, and even a little bit in that game last night, where Chimezi Metu's playing the 5, and he's playing. Him and Trey Lyles came in together last night, and so I think we're going to see a little bit of that, especially if Rashawn Holmes, he'll be. I mean, clearly he just has a stomach bug. It's non-COVID related stomach bug thing right now, but once he is back on the court, and I just it's going to be so difficult to find minutes for a guy like Alex. And I don't think he's done anything wrong. I just think at this point he's like really, really good depth to have.
Any update on Rashawn, by the way?
No, like we got to the game yesterday and we knew he wasn't going to be there. And it's just one of those deals. He's got some sort of stomach bug, and the worst thing you can do is bring someone with a stomach bug around a team of 19 other guys and a bunch of coaches that are all touching the same basketball. And, so it's better when, especially in camp, like let him go ahead and sit down for a couple of days and hope that he doesn't lose like 6 pounds. And, when he gets back out there, I'm sure he'll be fine. He's a big part of what they plan on doing. And I thought that was one of the more interesting things. They played 16 guys last night, and Rashawn Holmes wasn't one of them because he was sick. And that means that some of these guys, like, again, a Trey Lyles or a Chimezi Metu, like those minutes are going to go to Holmes. And it's going to be really difficult, especially early in the season, unless that just doesn't work and they find that out quick. But I'm gonna guess that they're figuring out ways to get around the whole Sabonis and Holmes on the court together thing. And a lot of that's going to be just stacking them with 3-point shooters everywhere.
James, I thought about this a little bit last night and even today when I was talking about KZ starting. And I know the replacement for him will be Keegan. I'm just going to say there was a part of me that was like, well, the perfect replacement might be Harrison, but I like Harrison as a starter. Harrison's not coming off the bench. He is a starter in this league. He's earned that right. So that's out the window. But it also got me thinking about how you said, this team needs a move. So, they need to make a move to guarantee themselves a playoff spot. And I don't hear me out when I say that. I hope you understand. I'm not trying to make it as if they're 2 games into the preseason. Sign them up. They're guaranteed in there. But where is the move in your opinion? Because if you go get a power forward, I mean, do you need to go get one when you have Keegan Murray right there? Small forward is Harrison Barnes. You got your shooting guard and Herder, Monk, all these other guys. You got your point guard, your center, your backups. If they were making a move, what's the move? Obviously, if you can get Kevin Durant or something, sure. But what's the move in your opinion that you're looking for?
Yeah, it's all about, if you are going to make a move, it's not making a move just to make a move. It's making a move to get considerably better. And if you can't do that, then that's fine. You stand pat and you see where you're at the deadline, and you have conversations with Harrison and see if he's more on board with sticking around and signing an extension. That's where I think you got to really look at it. But I'm kind of on the same boat with you, where I want to see what this team has at this point. Like, if you're going to make the move, like, it should have been 3 weeks ago, it should have been a month ago, should have been 2 months ago, and to solidify that one last piece that you need. But when I look at, I guess I'll answer it this way. When I look at like Kevin Herter coming in, right? Kevin Herter is a 24-year-old guy on a 4-year, $65 million contract. Like, who your starting shooting guard is for the next 4 years alongside De'Aaron Fox. If that's what you want. I mean, you got the guy already. And that's where I think the Kings would be looking. Like, can they find a 24, 25, 26-year-old under contract for 3 or 4 years with a team that's deciding that they have no interest in really competing this year, and they would love to dump some salary and take on a guy, whether it's Harrison or whether it's a package of like 3 or 4 guys that gets you to whatever the price tag is. That's where I would think like this team could take a gigantic step and go over the top. But you're not making a move just to make a move. Like there is like even the Jay Crowder thing. Like you don't get better by just adding Jay Crowder and losing Harrison Barnes. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a move that really does put you in that conversation for a 6 seed. Now, again, like going out and getting Jay Crowder, that's still something I would consider. I'm just not doing it with Harrison Barnes attached at all. That's not something that makes sense. Like you'd be going out to, if you're going to get that level of player, he's in your rotation, but he's more like 7, 8, 9 in your rotation. He's not 6, 7, 8. And you got to find the right piece. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Harrison going to be on this team all year. I think that's what it boils down to. Harrison Barnes is going to be on this team all year.
There's a good chance.
And I think it makes sense. I'm not down on it. I don't think that's a bad idea.
Not either.
Yeah. No, I don't, I've said it the whole time. You don't trade Harrison Barnes just to trade him. You trade him because his contract's going to expire, because you can't extend him, or you haven't been able to extend him at this point. You trade him because you get younger, or just find a deal that makes a lot of sense for yourself, but you don't trade him just to trade him. It's about asset management. That's what it's always about. He means too much to the franchise. He really does. Like on the court, off the court, in the locker room, he just means way too much.
And on top of that, guys, I think I know I watched specifically yesterday feeling this way. Harrison looked good out there. Harrison looks a little rejuvenated. I don't know if it's the people around him, like we talk about, like De'Aaron Fox and having, a quality team around him. But I just looked at Harrison, just watching him play. Maybe it's a health thing. Maybe last year he wasn't healthy last year, and that had something to do with it. But he's got a little bounce to his step. I like what I'm seeing from him out there on the floor. I like Harrison.
And what a difference 3 hours makes, boy. I tell you, James.
No, because see, I told you, James. I told you he was a starter. I just said I like KZ, and if you're gonna make the move, I don't know if the move might be for Harrison, but you can't do it.
For those just tuning in, the same guy talking about how much he loves Harrison Barnes tried to bench him 3 hours ago, talking about I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, and then proceeds to do it.
I didn't do it. I said he can't be on the bench. And
he doesn't even want to do that. He doesn't even want to trade him anymore. I mean, look at this. He
came around.
He wasn't always on the field. He looked good yesterday. He looked good yesterday. I saw him yesterday. I was like, hey, he's looking like he's moving, reverse layups, dunking, baseline, all this other stuff. He looked good yesterday.
He looked great last season early in the year. It was only when, the wheels fell off the bus again that he started to look like, oh no, here we are again. And here goes another year of my career. And, again, and when you're almost 30, those things matter. And now he is 30. Those things matter when a franchise that you're playing for just like takes a long approach and wipes out chunks of your career. I mean, look at the year before where we talked about they walk into the season with like 6 rotational players at best, maybe not even that. And then, like if you're Harrison Barnes, you're looking around. It's one thing to be De'Aaron Fox, like 21, 22 years old, like, this is kind of a bummer. It's a whole other thing to be a guy in your prime and looking at your prime like, hey, man, like the clock is ticking. Don't waste my years of my career. That doesn't make any sense. So I think right now the vibe is good. And as long as it stays good, we'll see the bounce in a lot of guys' steps. As soon as it falls apart, if it does, then we see how they hold up. And historically, that hasn't been good. And you got to, kind of ride out the storm here. And hopefully these guys have built the bonds that they need and are listening and have the foundation to get through the bad times.
All right, I want to talk more about that, riding out the storm. There's been a lot of talk about the team's schedule to start the season, which I think is a bit overblown, and I'll explain why. And we'll come back. We'll talk more with 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham, here on Sacramento sports leader, ESPN 1320. And we're in the update right now? Okay, perfect. That's why I tried to get out a little bit early. KC, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm going to slide
okay.
there.
Okay. Casey's got to run, y'all. I'll see you. Bring your headphones.
Yep.
And I'll see you in about 45 minutes or so, hopefully.
Yes, sir. All right, y'all.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.
I'm going to grab my coffee. It's right on the other side of the room.
Okay.
And the pug is at my feet snoring, so if you hear him, that's what that is.
No, that's all good. Mine's right next to me, too. Oh, good.
2 seconds.
Casey's headed into the studio. No King's ticket giveaway. We did that last week. Nothing that we've gotten approved of. We might have something next week. Can never tell. But yeah, no King's tickets today. Casey's on his way to the new studio. He's gonna miss the last 25 minutes or so that way he can get there at a reasonable time. He's got a 45-minute drive ahead of him, and I got a 20-minute drive. So me and James will take care of everything from here.
We got it. Yeah. I'm having an afternoon cup of coffee.
Very nice. Could use one of those.
I was going to say, like looking at the crowd last night, people need to jump on board pretty quick, because if this team gets off to a good start, I think there's a lot of excitement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be a tough ticket. It's going to be a tough ticket by December.
You said it was a good crowd last night?
It was a good crowd last night. It was a noisy crowd. It was a good crowd. I don't know the number, but I'd probably put it like 14,000, which for a preseason game, that's really good. And I know a lot of people you can get online and go get the tickets to the free thing on Sunday, this coming Sunday.
Jeez.
How many?
Yeah, I got you, David. Fuck. Yeah, I have no idea how big of a pain in the ass these graphics have been. I've changed them like 10 times.
That's funny. King's Pass is up to $80. I didn't have a cookie last night, Almer. Normally we do have cookies, but they brought them out at halftime. Yeah, I think they are still doing the King's Pass, Aldrin. Yeah, 14,000. I only drink 1 cup of coffee a day unless I'm at a Kings game. Then I end up drinking more. That was a question that John Poles asked.
There was no practice today, right? Those videos you posted were from last night?
Yeah, it was from last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, no practice. And then we'll have a short practice tomorrow before they get on the team plane for Phoenix. Yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. Oh, man. I might have some dates, or I do have some dates for you to be with me if you're open to them, but we'll work around like the practice schedule and all of that stuff.
Okay.
Because we'll probably be in the studio. But I'll find out tonight, honestly. I'll find out tonight. So we're going to give it a test go today.
Somebody asked about my Natty Boy hat, David. I have this because I'm actually Bohemian. I'm from Czechoslovakia. Well, I'm not from. My grandfather was from Czechoslovakia. So that's why I wear the National Bohemian hat.
That should work, Jesse, hopefully. All right, let's try this again. James Ham, 1320 Kings Insider, Kings Beat, spelled correctly.
Oh, is it spelled incorrectly?
I think I put an extra I or flipped the I, or I don't know what I did. I was putting these together last night in the fourth quarter, thinking this is probably a bad idea. You should wait. You shouldn't do this right now. Like the 5th time I've changed them, like adding certain things, taking certain things out, moving them over. I've grown to hate these graphics.
That's awesome.
I hate them. I did make this one last night.
Oh, there we go. Ooh, nice. Bob Hatchie, Prague is one of the most incredible cities in the world. Just absolutely beautiful. The good thing about the Czechs is when war comes, they just lay down and go, we're going to get invaded. And so, like, you go to Prague and there's one building that's damaged by World War II. And that's it.
Hmm. Amazing. 14,000 there last night. That shows this fan base is ready, man.
Oh, I think so too.
This fan base is ready. All right, James, we're coming back. Hang on.
All right.
Live on the Odyssey app, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. You can watch the show. KC had to run out. KC's actually on his way to his brand new studio that they're going to allow me to work in. He's on his way out here to Roseville. We'll do our big test run. If you watch on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, anything like that, keep your notifications on. We'll probably be going live again in about an hour, just to hopefully work out some kinks, work out some of the new studio rust. Of course, we've never done a show in a studio before, so this will be a preseason game for us, James, coming up in about an hour, and then hopefully the regular season in the new studio starts tomorrow. But we'll all find out together. As James Ham is with me. You mentioned this a moment ago. We were talking about Harrison and how he starts the season, and this isn't true just for Harrison Barnes. It's true for De'Aaron Fox and other guys who have been through so much losing here, but kind of riding out that storm. Things feel really, really good right now. I mean, drafting Keegan Murray, watching how well he played in Summer League, landing Malik Monk, trading for Kevin Huerter, some of these other moves. This is a lot of wins. Small wins, but a lot, or Keegan feels like a big win, but a lot of wins for the Sacramento Kings in a short time frame. James, we're not used to this. And you talked about 14,000 being at the game last night and this momentum that seems to be building for this fan base who is just so ready to see a winning product on the floor. And you talked about, inevitably it's going to happen. There's going to be some adversity. Sacramento Kings aren't going to win all 4 preseason games and then 82 regular season games. Some losses are going to come. It's probably going to be some losses that happen all in a row. Hopefully not 9. Hell, I'll go so far. Hopefully not 5 or 6. Let's keep the amount of losses in a row down to a minimum. But you talked about kind of riding out this storm because of all of this positive momentum that this team has, and guys like Harrison and De'Aaron knowing, this is a better roster. This is a better group of basketball players in Kings uniform. Will that make it easier for them when these tough patches come around?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think like there's something to the way you lose, right? So if you lose because you miss baskets, that happens, right? If you lose because you do nothing but blow defensive assignments all night long and you're down by 20 at half and it's over, there comes, like, when you walk out of that, you're disgusted with the way your team played and the way that things happened, and it just leaves like such a bad taste. It's one thing to like fight the good fight and lose on a buzzer beater, or to face a team that's much better than you and to lose by 6. That's okay. Like, you can walk away from that feeling okay. It's a whole other thing when you lose because you beat yourself again and again and again. And I think that's something that this team shouldn't have to deal with nearly as much. They are a smart group of players. And when shots don't fall or things are all going wrong, they have other guys that can step in and maybe give you a spark. Like Terrence Davis isn't part of the main rotation at this point. And we saw last night where he comes in and he gets you 14 points, a huge block. He had a couple of rebounds. Like, all of a sudden you start seeing these tertiary players as like ways that you can change momentum in a game that might be going wrong. And like, so far, adversity hasn't hit this team. And we'll see if they're a bend don't break, or if they basically, like, the equivalent of the Raiders prevent defense is what a lot of these King seasons feel like, where you're just gonna keep bending and bending and bending, and until you're finally, kicked out of the playoff picture with a week or two to go into season. That feels like how the last couple of years have gone. But I just think that like the mental fortitude of this team, having a head coach who's in his first year, having a head coach who is in his 31st year of actual NBA basketball and his ninth year as a head coach, versus again, like when times get tough, how are the Los Angeles Lakers, specifically under Darvin Ham, going to react? Like how are the Portland Trailblazers under Chauncey Billups, who doesn't have the track record of a Mike Brown, who doesn't have like some like alternative game plan he can turn to try something new on the fly. They just don't have that. Those other teams don't, and that's why I do think that like the Mike Brown hire is going to be something that buoys his team throughout the season, and also keeps players engaged, because this is his first year and he's going to be here for a while.
I think too much has been made about the start of the schedule, like the Clippers, the Warriors. I think 3 times in the first 2 weeks. Memphis is in there, Miami's in there, and no doubt these are some tough teams. But we do this so regularly. We did it last year, where you look at teams. Oh, this is a bad team and this is a good team, and we looked at a stretch of bad teams that were playing the Sacramento Kings, and it worked out really, really poorly for the Sacramento Kings.
December.
But we insist on looking at the schedule and trying to form win-loss records, and I think it's a tired practice, because I'm not particularly high on Portland. I don't put any stock in what we saw last night. Or I put a little bit of stock into what we saw last night, but I didn't like Portland going in, period. I believe the Clippers are going to be very good. Are they going to be very good game number 2? We'll see. Warriors, I think, have a whole host of issues, and I think they might just be checked out for a little while, and then they'll ramp up and get ready to go. The Warriors know they can win titles finishing at the 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed. They're not, as Draymond Green says, they're not getting up for the sorry MFers like us here in Sacramento. So I think we look at these schedules. I think we get a little too wrapped up, because we're basing this all off of what happened last year, and that might not be the same.
Yeah, I mean, you're basing it off of what's happened in the last 16 years. So again, I think the schedule, it looks scary at times, but let's just, like, for sake of argument, like if you finish the season with the Warriors and I don't know, the Bucks, and just throw out like 3 really good teams, when you first look at that, you're like, oh man, they're just going to lose the last 4 games of the season. And then if you pull back, you go, or those teams are going to be resting all their players in the last 4 games of the season. We looked at their schedule, and I brought this up last week with Kenny. We looked at their schedule, and initially I circled a couple of games that I just thought, like, it's almost 2 guaranteed losses. You got Utah one night, and you're back at home the next night. And one of them, it's against Golden State, and one of them, I can't remember who else the other team was, but it's a quality opponent. And so you're looking at, like, a game where you almost always lose in Utah, because that's just the way it's been historically, and then getting on one of the worst plane ride back-to-backs back home, not getting home until 3 or 4 in the morning, having to get back up and go for another game the next night. Well, all of a sudden, those games don't look scary anymore, because Utah is not that good. And if you can get a win on the first night of the back-to-back, and you can take that flight home and you're feeling good about yourself and walk into a game against a team that's quality, maybe you got a shot now where you didn't have a shot. So things snowball in NBA season. It's just the way that it goes. I know my first year, they lost, I think it was 7 in a row, and then they beat the Washington Wizards, and it was DeMarcus and John Wall's rookie season, so it was the first time they were going to play against each other ever. And John Wall hurt his hand or his wrist in warmups and was announced as a starter and then couldn't play. Well, the Kings won that game, and then they lost 8 after that. So they literally lost 15 out of 16. And it was just brutal. And it was early in the season. We're talking like November, early December. And, the season's already over. I just don't think that we're going to get to that point with this team. I wouldn't worry about the schedule. They'll take care of, if they're fighting and they're in every game, it's just like, do you think Memphis worries about the schedule anymore? 3 years ago, Memphis worried about the schedule just like we worry about the schedule right now. when we're covering the team and we're looking at the schedule and trying to break it down.
I
They
think I
worried
just
about
lost
it.
James. It's really weird. I can see James; he's talking, but I feel like I just lost James's audio for some reason. James, we just lost your audio for absolutely no reason as we were going over the Memphis Grizzlies schedule there, or Memphis Grizzlies not needing to look at schedules anymore. But that's kind of the whole point of this. You don't have to do that stuff anymore. And I kind of feel like that's true with the Sacramento Kings, is where we look at the Clippers, Warriors. We look at all these games. Oh man, oh that's a 3-9 start. That's a this start. That's a that start. Well, no, it might not be. We're basing all of this stuff off of what we saw last year. And we've lost James, and we're not really sure why. So we're going to try to get James set back up. Yeah, I don't know. What if I?
Are you
did
sure you lost me?
this? No, still no James.
Still no James?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll try to get this worked out, James. We'll try to get this figured out over there. As I'll just ride solo here for a few minutes as we get these things corrected. But I think looking at the schedule and trying to figure out, oh, this team's going to be 3-9. Well, if you actually believe that the Kings are better, that's you got to think that the Kings can get wins. Now I'm confused because James says the StreamYard can hear him. I hate when stuff like this happens because I can't imagine how stupid we sound on the radio right now. We just must sound absolutely ridiculous. And now my mic's not. So it's obviously something on my end. Unfortunately, I don't have anybody here to really help me out with this. So I know that we sound fine on the radio. We sound fine on the radio. Your stream mic is turned off. Well, there's only one way I can fix that. So, Jesse, you're going to have to crack the mic and cover me for me for like 10 seconds. So go ahead and do that as we continue to be an amateur one radio station. Unmute this. Let's bring James back. And
We're
we got James back.
your audio input died.
I think that's sometimes my mixing board, my Rodecaster, it just decides, you know what? I'm done for the day.
Yeah.
No, you can't be done for the day. We've got 12 more minutes to show. You can't quit. Yeah, and it just decided to quit like Magic Johnson, just walked out, didn't tell anybody. But you were talking about how 3 years ago the Memphis Grizzlies used to look at the schedule and go, "Oh, we figure this out, we figure this out, we figure that out." Now that's not the case anymore. The Sacramento Kings, maybe they're obviously not as comfortable as where the Memphis Grizzlies are, but if you believe that the Kings are better, you got to stop looking at these schedules and going, "Man, this is a 3-9 start to the season."
Yeah, everybody plays the same 82 games. I mean, there's some slight variance. Everyone plays 82 games. Everybody plays every opponent in the opposite conference twice. Everyone plays everyone in their own conference 3 times and their own division 4 times and then one other division a 4th time. Everyone plays the same schedule. So at some point, it's got to be about how good you are and how strong you are as a group and your intestinal fortitude, and not about a schedule, not worrying about who's coming up next. You just go play the next game. You walk in with the best game plan you can. You hope that you don't play, Giannis Antetokounmpo like 6 times, and they won't, unless somehow he gets traded midseason to a team that they're going to play 4 times after they've already played the Bucks twice. Mm-hmm. So there's just so little ways. Like you just have to go out and play it, and I really do think that this year does that sort of vibe feels different, where they're not worried nearly as much. They're worried about themselves and how they're executing and how they feel and how healthy they are, and let the chips fall where they may.
When's cut day?
You don't have to cut until the day before the season starts.
Oh, so okay, at the very, very latest next Tuesday.
Yeah. So I'm almost positive it's the day right before. And then the other thing is, like they could make cuts way early, and then they could pick up a couple more guys and then cut those guys as well and do the whole Exhibit 10, where they give them a $50,000 bonus, and if they stay in the G League for 60 days, with the Stockton Kings as one of their players that they've allocated to the G League,
Mhm.
then we could see them pick up a couple more guys and then waive them again, just because you really are trying to maximize that G League experience as well. Like you're trying to build up the program, and that's how you do it. And I wrote about it today. Like cuts are coming, and we saw 16 players play, and Rashawn Holmes was out, so 3 guys didn't play, and it really does kind of like take a big red marker and just like, okay, are these the 3 cuts?
Yeah. And even that, I mean, I mean, Quinn Cook didn't play. Sam Merrill didn't play. I don't know. That's a big surprise to anybody. Certainly not a knock on the young man. Chime Moneki didn't play either. And then I wonder how much of, say, like, Bazemore, Keon Ellis, Matthew Dellavedova, those guys who came in really late, how much of that had to do with, the Kings? I don't know. I don't know how many points they were up by the time those guys entered the game, but it was 36 at one point. The game was never in doubt in the fourth quarter. How much of those guys playing was actually a consequence of where the game was at?
Yeah, I think it's a tremendous like that's why a lot of guys played. I mean, what we thought was that they would play the first team and the second team, and then they said, Mike Brown said he was going to play his starters in the third quarter and his bench in the third quarter, his second team guys. But then you thought maybe the second team guys would go into the fourth quarter a little bit, and then you'd start peppering some of the other guys. But they got up to like 6 additional players. So like that's a lot of players outside of the first and the second team that actually hit the court. So yeah, I mean it was because it was circumstantial. I think it was because you've blown a team out, and and it is what it is. Like this team does look like they have a couple of clear cuts, and I don't know what that means for a guy like Chima Moneki or what it means for Quinn Cook. I think Quinn Cook is an Exhibit 10, so he can go right down to the Stockton Kings, and they own his rights because he played for Stockton last year. Sam Merrill, they gave 150,000, so he's not an Exhibit 10, and they can't just send him straight to the G League. They'd have to draft him, and the same thing with Chima if he's the guy. And then Mike Brown could throw us for a loop and change things up, and maybe he wants to give a veteran or two some burn, and so they can go get a job. He can show other teams that they still belong, and so we get to game 3 and we have different guys playing, and so that's possible too. But I really do think that they're centering in on what's going to happen next, and there's still opportunity for them to bring in a couple extra guys to just make sure they get that extra 50,000. I think I read G League salary this year is, I believe, $37,000. So if you can give a guy an Exhibit 10 contract and he decides to stick around for 60 days at the G League, he gets an extra 50,000. So it's more than his actual salary, and it doesn't count against your cap.
Any chance, we talked a lot about that third point guard position? Any chance we don't keep any of the guys like Quinn Cook, Matthew Dellavedova? We just don't keep any of them.
Yeah, I think there's always a possibility. There's always a possibility the Kings walk into the season with 14 players too. They could cut 4 guys. They don't have to have 15. 15 is the maximum. They can go down to, I think it's 13. Yeah, and so anyway, I it's one of those deals where they can do some things to manipulate the cap a little bit and to bring in other players, but whether they need a backup point guard, I don't know. But I'll say this: I've liked what Dellavedova has done. I like that in the fourth quarter, he got a ball. He's on the perimeter. He had an opportunity to hit a wide open 3, and instead he looked at Nemias Keita and set him up for a lob, knowing that his big man had been battling in the post, had been grabbing rebound after rebound and blocking shots. He looked to get him some reward, and that's why I really do like Dellavedova for this team, at least for right now. And if you get to December and you need to make a roster move, I mean, you're talking about a minimum scale contract. It's not that big of a deal. I don't think his deal becomes fully guaranteed until January 10th. And so you have time once you get into the regular season to actually decide what you're going to do there.
You were pretty critical of Quinn Cook in the first preseason game. And I thought, man, that's a pretty strong observation that Ham has made there. And then he didn't play in the second game. I go, gosh, maybe James wasn't the only one who felt that way about Quinn Cook's first outing of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty straightforward with you guys with regards to Davion too. I don't think Davion has looked, of the rotation guys, he's the one guy who's stood out, who hasn't hit his shots, who's looked like he's forcing it a bit. Quinn Cook was a little different. Quinn, again, you look at Dellavedova is 32 years old and is in incredible shape. He's been in Sacramento for like 3 months working with the trainers, trying to get ready for this season, trying to prove that he can get back to the NBA level after spending last year in Australia. And not only the last year in Australia, but the previous 4 seasons struggling with injuries all the way through the year. So when a guy doesn't look like he's in just like top-notch shape, maybe I'm wrong, maybe he is, but he looks a little slow of foot. And, the rest of the guys don't. Everyone else is flying around like crazy.
Well, I guess it'll be an interesting week. I tend to think coaches base what they're about to do, the roster cuts, far more on what we don't see than what we do see.
Yes. Yeah,
and
completely.
There's far more happening in practice that's going to influence who does and doesn't make this roster than what we see against the Lakers or Portland or Phoenix on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I want to mention something too. I wrote about this afternoon. We got to go back in the locker room for the first time last night. And that's the first time, I think it's 31 months. And it's crazy, but those things are huge. For the people out there who like good coverage of the team, it's really, really good. It's good that like a small group of us are allowed in the locker room, and it's going to help the content be that much better. And there's a certain amount of accountability that comes with being in an NBA locker room. You want to write something, you want to blow someone up, you want to go on the radio and tear somebody apart. Well, you got to go in the locker room and face them. And so there's a different level of accountability that comes with that. I just want to make that point because it was a big night for reporters who have been around for a long time. Because when you get that stripped away and all of your content is on Zoom and everyone's already put out every question that you've asked 15 times on social media, it's going to be really cool to get back in there and do real storytelling.
That's great stuff. And that storytelling you can get over on thekingsbeat.com. Become a subscriber to the Kings Beat newsletter. Become a premium subscriber. Get that premium content from the premium sports journalist in this city, our man James Ham, our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham. Make sure you check out the Kings Beat podcast as well. If you're watching